Hello and welcome to the 2016 Behaviorist Convention. As we open our conference, we are lucky to have a keynote speaker who has contributed a great deal to our profession, broadly as psychologists and specifically as behaviorists. It is not hard to argue that the field of behaviorism as we know it owes a large portion of its popularity and its success to the persistent and tireless work of our keynote speaker, Dr. John B. Watson. Dr. Watson began his career in psychology at the University of Chicago, where he obtained his PhD, and while in their program went ahead and pursued an MD as well. His thesis, chaired by Dr. Jacques Loeb, was in the field of comparative psychology. This was a foreshadowing of his future interest in how humans learn behavior using animals as models. His thesis was completed in 1903 entitled Animal Education, an experimental study on the psychical development of the white rat, correlated with the growth of its nervous system, and was a testament to his skills as an experimental researcher, which earned him not only his PhD, but also a faculty position at the University of Chicago. Watson continued working with animals in mazes, along with his colleague Harvey Carr. He used direct observation and experimental studies to detect how learning occurred through the repeated behaviors of rats. This would be a foundation for his later experiments and theories in human psychology, which challenged many researchers in the field, who primarily believed human behavior was introspective in nature. Though he never completed the MD, his knowledge of biology and the academic fervor he utilized in his work surely influenced his acceptance as professor in the Department of Psychology at Johns Hopkins at the young age of 29. Shortly after Watson began at Johns Hopkins in 1908, the head of his department was fired, and Watson was an obvious choice to take the reins, with his plethora of ideas and growing recognition in the field. During this time, Watson set up a state-of-the-art lab to study animal behavior, which was similar to and expanded upon studies he conducted at the University of Chicago. Watson collected data to support his views on behaviorism during this time, and in 1913, at an address at Columbia University, proclaimed his theories to the world, challenging the untestable work of many psychologists. In an article based on this speech titled "Psychology as the Behaviorist Views It," Watson made statements denouncing the utility of previous work in psychology research, such as, "The only fault I have to find with these disciplines is that many of their material is stated in terms of introspection, whereas a statement in terms of objective results would be far more valuable." This would be a paradigm shift in psychology, moving toward observable studies of human behaviors rather than relying on hidden intrapsychic phenomena. In 1915, Watson became the president of the American Psychological Association and continued to promote his views of psychology as a behavioral science. He based his ideas on his own research with animals and his views that since humans evolved from less complex animals, the information gained from studying lower organisms could then be applied to humans as a natural extrapolation. Until this point, Watson had focused his research primarily on animals, but now saw a need to implement his ideas with human subjects. This would be in order to gain a wider acceptance of his views and to prove their applicability with humans and to maintain funding and space at Johns Hopkins. Watson studied the emotional behavior of infants in response to a stimuli in a systematic way. He developed what is now a well-known study, the Little Albert experiments, through which he was able to show the learning of an emotional response to a previously innocuous stimulus. Around this time, though Watson favored and promoted change through environmental approaches, he still held beliefs about the presence of innate behaviors and responses of animals which were inherited from ancestors, though this is often overlooked due to his outspokenness on behaviorism. Watson and Rayner published the Little Albert research in 1920, and while still a successful researcher, Watson's personal behavior was called into question, and he was asked to leave Johns Hopkins. Though dejected, Watson was motivated and launched a new career in advertising, and though no longer an academic, continued to promote and write about behaviorism and its applicability in advertising and child development. Even after his dismissal, Watson published 2 books, Behaviorism and The Psychological Care of Infant and Child. In Behaviorism, Watson alleged he could utilize his principles to shape the life of any infant in such a way that they could grow up into any profession chosen. While our speaker later admitted he overstated what was shown in his research, he stood by his views on behaviorism and continued to develop the field and pave the way for future researchers. It is my great pleasure to bring Dr. Watson to the stage to inspire us with his newest research and further refine his already impressive work.